It's Talk of Iowa from IPR News. I'm Charity Nebbe. The Iowa Water and Land Legacy Constitutional Amendment passed in 2010 with 63% of the vote. It was designed to fund a natural resources and outdoor recreation trust fund. But 16 years later, the trust has never been funded. Even though the amendment passed with strong bipartisan support, the source of funding is supposed to be 3/8 of a 1-cent sales tax increase. A sales tax increase needs legislative action, and the legislature has refused to act. Estimates show that if the trust was funded, it would provide up to $180 million each year for conservation in Iowa. Polls show that public support for this action has only risen in the years since it was approved, and a new effort to convince the Iowa legislature to fund the trust is underway. Today at noon, the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation and other groups are hosting a free webinar called Yes, I Will, How to Advocate for Conservation Funding in Iowa. And this hour, we're going to find out what's at stake. As I mentioned, the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation is one of the groups that is supporting or is hosting a free webinar today. They're hosting that webinar along with Audubon Upper Mississippi River, Iowa Audubon, and affiliated chapters. And we have on the line today Anna Gray, Public Policy Director and Counsel with the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation. Hello, Anna.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Also, Lindsay Brice, Policy Director at Audubon Upper Mississippi River. Hello, Lindsay.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having us today.
Well, it's wonderful to have you both here. And I do want to start with some history. So I gave a thumbnail sketch. The public voted for this constitutional amendment. The legislature had crafted it. There was strong bipartisan support, but the fund was never funded. So maybe, Anna, you can kick us off. Tell us what happened after the constitutional amendment was passed.
Yeah. Well, first off, you did a great job giving the summary there. And really the effort to fund the trust and create the trust started back in 2006 when several conservation leaders and policymakers came together to create an advisory committee to explore many different options for creating sustainable and reliable funding for conservation. And ultimately, what they identified was the Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund and the sales tax as the mechanism for funding that. So, as you mentioned, it was approved by Iowa voters in 2010. And then after that, really there has been an effort underway by conservation groups like Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation and many, many partners and business leaders and community leaders to actually see the trust funded. Many Iowans actually thought they were funding it at the time that the trust was created. However, the constitutional language actually retains power within the state legislature to fund the trust. And so since that time, it has been a combination of efforts in both public education and helping them understand that we actually need to engage the legislature to fund the trust. It's been some direct communications with the legislature, organizing amongst all areas of interest. So the trust fund was created for the purposes of protecting and enhancing our water quality and natural areas in this state, including parks, trails, and wildlife habitat, as well as enhancing and protecting our agricultural soils. And so clearly that impacts so many different aspects of our life here in Iowa, whether it be outdoor recreation opportunities, having safe, clean drinking water, and an ability to enrich our communities with the assets and experiences that we know make our communities really vibrant. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, over the 16 years since the constitutional amendment has been passed, have you or others ever felt that it was close to being funded?
Yes. I think there's a few different times you could point to throughout the last 16 years, but in particular, in 2020, the Governor Reynolds, listed the funding of the trust in her condition of the state address. And that was the first time a governor had specifically called for funding the trust. And efforts were really underway. The governor was actually out doing town halls, getting the public engaged in this issue, encouraging them to engage with the legislature. But then, of course, an unforeseen event in the global pandemic that year.
I'm curious, from your perspective, why do you think now is a time when it feels like we could get a significant amount of momentum and possibly get this trust funded?
Absolutely. That's a great question. What we know about these kinds of funds, and I'll back up just a little bit and say that Audubon's mission is to protect birds in the places that they need. And so this sort of public funding is exactly the kind of work that we're doing across my region of the upper Mississippi region of Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri. And in this case, what we know is that these sorts of funds and these sorts of public funding for the environment and for conservation, it's supported across all political boundaries. We see overwhelming support across party lines in states that look very, very differently when you look at sort of a national political map.
Anna, we'll turn back to you. So in 2020, obviously, the pandemic got in the way of funding this trust. What do we know about why the legislature has been so reluctant to fund the trust? Again, this was a bipartisan effort in the legislature. It was a strong bipartisan approval of the constitutional amendment. Why not do something that the people want?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One, it is tied to a sales tax increase. So anytime you have tax policy involved, it is going to get a little bit complicated, especially in terms of, finding other tax policy measures that it potentially could tie to. The other component, I think, is a lot of times just a lack of understanding of how exactly these monies would be invested in Iowa and in our communities. And so that is something that, one, I work to help legislators come up with ideas and community leaders come up with ideas for how the trust fund can best serve our people and our communities. And then more recently, what I hear from legislators is they're just not hearing that this is a priority for their constituents and communities. But we know that water quality, outdoor recreation, and many of these things are priorities. It's just making that link that the trust fund can be a solution to addressing some of those concerns and opportunities. And so what we're working to do...
It's not really surprising that after 16 years, the public isn't clamoring for something. I mean, I would guess a lot of voters don't even remember what happened.
Yeah, and many people of the public, even many legislators, were not old enough to vote 16 years ago, myself included. But now I have a young son, and I'm working to protect our natural resources so that he will be able to enjoy them long into the future.
Let's go. Oh, I think we have Lindsay back on the line. I was going to return to her. Well, we'll do that in just a moment. Oh, my goodness. What a fun day. All right, Anna. So if this trust fund were actually funded, again, estimates show around $180 million going into that fund. Who manages that money? Where does it go?
So the way it is set up is in the state code. Again, there are constitutional purposes for the money, so it has to be kind of within those constitutional bounds. But there's quite a bit of flexibility that the legislature would have within code. And there was what we call a formula established in April of 2010, ahead of the vote. And what it ultimately did was kind of create a blueprint for how this money would flow into programs and practices that are already well established, that already have good systems in place, that have grants that communities know how to apply for and implement. And so there's a formula within state code, and that formula is subject to the legislature's discretion. But ultimately, as long as it is tied to conservation of our water, land, and wildlife, the legislature has a lot of flexibility. And so what I encourage folks who support the Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund to do is, one, tell their legislature that they support it, and two, specifically why, and what components of it are most valuable to them and their communities.
And at this point, again, you've got a webinar today at noon. You are trying to do a lot of connecting with people. Do you find that there's interest? Are people talking about this at this point, Anna?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are in the process of just, reestablishing a baseline education of what the trust fund is and what it can do, and then giving people the tools and resources to feel confident with engaging with their legislature.
We are going to take a short break. We're going to try to continue to have this conversation in just a moment. With me today, Anna Gray, Public Policy Director and Counsel with the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation. Lindsay Brice is also here, Policy Director at Audubon Upper Mississippi River. We're talking about the Iowa Water and Land Legacy Constitutional Amendment that passed in 2010 but has never been funded, and a new effort to get that funded. More in a moment. This is Talk of Iowa from IPR News. It's Talk of Iowa from IPR News. I'm Charity Nebbe. This hour, we're talking about the Iowa Water and Land Legacy Constitutional Amendment. It passed in 2010 with 63% of the vote. It was designed to fund a natural resources and outdoor recreation trust fund, but 16 years later, that trust has never been funded. To fund the trust, the legislature needs to act. The source of funding is supposed to be 3/8 of a 1-cent sales tax increase, and the legislature has refused to act over the past 16 years. Estimates show that if the trust was funded, it would provide up to $180 million each year for conservation in Iowa, and polls show that public support for this action has only risen in the years since the amendment was approved. A new effort to convince the Iowa legislature to fund the trust is underway. Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation, Audubon Upper Mississippi River, and Iowa Audubon and affiliated chapters are hosting a free webinar called Yes, I Will, How to Advocate for Conservation Funding in Iowa today at noon. And I have been through some technical problems. I have been talking with Anna Gray, Public Policy Director and Counsel with the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation, and Lindsay Brice, Policy Director at Audubon Upper Mississippi River. And Lindsay, I want to go back to you. Why do you think now is a good time for this effort? Why do you feel that this could be a moment that people could be successful?
Thanks so much. That's a great question. We know that this work, these conservation funds in states across the country are widely supported across all political boundaries. We see overwhelming support. For example, Minnesota's trust fund was on the 2024 ballot. We worked on that in Minnesota, and it passed in every single county. Missouri currently has a park, soil, and water funding sales tax that has been in place for several decades, and it's on the August ballot for a 10-year renewal. The last time it was on the ballot was 2016, and it was approved by about 80% of the voters. Again, it passed in every single county. This is a similar kind of sales tax structure where voters are essentially voting to tax themselves. And Missouri uses that funding to keep their state parks free of entry fees, as well as funding important soil and water projects. So we see this funding structure for durable, consistent conservation funding happening in states across the country. So Iowa's already created their fund, so the fund is already in existence, and so now it's just time to fund it.
I want to bring another guest into the conversation now. Adam Shirley is the CEO of Iowa's County Conservation System. Welcome back, Adam.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Glad we can connect.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And Adam, so I was asking earlier, I think a lot of us spend time in county parks, but maybe we don't understand the management of that. Can you just briefly tell me how Iowa's County Conservation System works?
Yeah, so every county in Iowa has a county conservation board since 1956. There's been one in each county. Actually, 1989, Alan McKee came on. But anyway, we have 99 county conservation boards. So each county also has a board of supervisors, and they appoint that conservation board. And then that gives local control for each county to decide what their park system should look like, if it's going to be trails focused or parks focused or wildlife focused or a combination of all three. So you'll see those different in every single county, and we're very proud of our system.
So, Adam, Tell me why your organization is advocating for funding this trust. What does it mean to you?
Well, county conservation boards support, Iowa's natural resources first and foremost, but we're also the conduit, between other organizations that help landowners of all types, whether that's people looking to have wildlife habitat on their property, or agricultural groups that are looking to do conservation practices and get linked up with soil and water conservation districts. We're kind of that group that can connect all the other groups to state funds, local funds, federal funds to get stuff done on the ground. So that's why it's vital for us. We definitely see on the path that Iowa's been taking, and we feel like our state's kind of at a crossroads right now with some of the issues that are up.
So what kind of challenges, looking statewide, and Anna may have more to say about this, but, after that constitutional amendment was passed in 2010, just a few years after that, we really saw steep cuts to the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. In looking at the numbers over the years, back in 2009, the budget for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources was $22 million. It was cut to $11 million in 2018. It's around $16 million now. So this was something that obviously made a big impact on our state parks and many of the other things that the Department of Natural Resources does. And the Iowa County Conservation System, of course, is separate from that. But you talk about being at a crossroads. Adam, it feels like the public said one thing and state government said another at the same time. Is that your take?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a promise that's out there with the funding of the trust that's yet to happen. And I think there's a lot of promises that are made. And obviously the one that rose to the top of the current administration was cutting taxes, right? And so that's been on the agenda for a while. And I think the community and folks in Iowa look at this as something that is an investment. And so we all know that it's not just about saving to have a sustainable future. We need to invest back. And I think that's what this effort's all about.
How would funding this trust affect the county conservation system?
The county conservation system would have a lot more partnership with other groups. Part of that funding mechanism is the distribution. And so those funds would be distributed first through soil conservation and water quality groups for watershed protection, lake restoration. A lot of the funds would flow through the DNR for state parks, wildlife habitat, and conservation. It would flow through the REAP program. And then the last portion of that is called the local partnership program. And that's where counties, cities, and county conservation NGOs would have pieces of the funding that they can use to enhance local dollars, go after grants, create other projects, and work with these other entities to create more trails, parks, wildlife areas.
Anna, I'd love to get your input on this, as well as I was just mentioning to Adam a moment ago, after this constitutional amendment was approved with such a strong majority, we saw steep cuts to the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, which is a major conservation organization, of course, in the state of Iowa. It feels like we have been working at cross purposes. What are your reflections on that?
I would say that Iowa's water quality and a demand for outdoor recreation spaces has only grown in that time. And what has happened also since 2010 is Iowa Department of Natural Resources, Department of Transportation, who administers the State Recreational Trails Program, and Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship have all really strengthened the framework that is needed to implement the trust fund monies. Like I said, all of these programs currently exist, but they are now heavily in heavy demand. They are very efficient at administrating their programs. And so in many ways, the trust fund isn't necessarily new, but it creates sustainable, reliable funding that allows communities who are applying for grants to have some reliable funding in years ahead and knowing what grant opportunities will be available. So, for example, Iowa loves to claim itself as the trails capital of the world. We have an amazing trails network across our state in urban and rural communities. However, the state recreational trails program receives about $2.5 million a year, whereas grant applications for that program come in at over $20 million every year. So again, the demand is very strong, and our agencies who will be administering the trust fund have really honed their skill in administering these funds and creating a framework for effective, quick implementation.
Well, we just saw in Iowa the creation of a new state office dedicated to expanding state tourism and recreation options. It's the Iowa Office of Outdoor Recreation. It's under the purview of the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Again, this is a move by Governor Kim Reynolds. It's at a moment where, of course, many Iowans are very concerned about water quality in the state. And we're investing in this government organization. That seems like a positive move, but it doesn't look like a deep investment in improving water quality. It looks like it's maybe focused on marketing what we have, even though people have very strong concerns. Anna, what are your thoughts about this most recent move?
I think it is positive because I think it is an acknowledgement that this is something that Iowans care about and that our lawmakers and policymakers are seeing that. Iowa Economic Development Authority did a study a few years back and found that right behind job opportunities, outdoor amenities and natural landscapes were among the top factors that would drive workforce attraction to Iowa. So I think that is really a reflection of something grounded in research. And then we also know that people tend to advocate for the things they care about. And so, for example, if we can get more people out into our natural resources on the water, I see that as a positive experience for people. And then also giving them an experience that is grounded, that they can take and advocate if they want cleaner water, which I think we clearly see more and more that Iowans care deeply about clean water and have genuine concerns about its potential impacts on our public health. And I think there's also, there is a cost to inaction, and we are seeing that more and more prevalently. So for example, the Central Iowa Water Works, it costs about $16,000 a day to run our nitrate removal systems, which is why the Central Iowa Water Works, in partnership with Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship and many others, have been working in the watershed to clean the water at its source. And the Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund would be another source of funding to accelerate those types of investments.
We have a few minutes left here, and I would love to hear from each one of you. Obviously, this webinar that's scheduled for noon today is an effort to give people the tools to advocate for something they care about. But Lindsay, I'll start with you. What is your message to people who care about conservation in Iowa? What do you want people to know?
Well, one of the important pieces of the trust fund is the work that it can do with private landowners. Private landowners in Iowa and across the country are stewards of the majority of remaining grasslands. And conservation organizations know that if we want to move the needle in tangible and long-lasting ways, we have to be collaborating with private landowners. Audubon is doing that on the ground in Iowa already, and we really see the trust fund as a way to expand not just our work with private landowners, but the work that Iowa landowners can do in being amazing stewards to their land across the state now into the future. So the message from us is really that policymakers are part of your community. They are their kids are in the same schools. Everybody's going to the same grocery stores and the same little league games and all of those kinds of things. And that making this a larger conversation in Iowa now before it's on any sort of before any sort of vote is coming up or there's even a bill out there is really important, because it's important that policymakers know what people care about.
Lindsay, thank you so much for talking with us today and bearing with us through our technical problems. Lindsay Bruce is policy.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us, and we really appreciate it.
Lindsay Brice is a policy director at Audubon Upper Mississippi River. Adam, what is your hope? What do you hope that people hear today and people who participate in this webinar and, as people who do care about conservation in Iowa, you're trying to help them get motivated to act? What do you want people to hear?
Yeah, I just think, like what you said, with the issues that are at hand right now, I think this trust offers a solution and something for everyone. It offers, not only water quality, but, cancer is a huge thing in Iowa right now. The health benefits are immense from the trust fund. And I talked a little bit about an investment earlier, and I want to talk just briefly about a return on that investment. So we did an economic impact study to see what outdoor recreation contributes to Iowa. Each home in Iowa, just the tourism generated by our outdoor natural resources, saves each home in Iowa about $900 per year in just offset. Our the overall economic impact of outdoor recreation is about $8 billion per year. So that's a huge savings. And a lot of that breaks down to soil and water conservation, saving about $80 million per year. Healthcare savings is another huge area. If we were able to expand Iowa's green spaces by 10%, that's not saying that 10% of the state would be in green space. It's saying that just, if you have 1% now, that 1.1%, if we just made that subtle change, we could save $80 million in annual healthcare costs, including about $19 million in medical expenditures. The number of cases of diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, all have really high positive implications. There's lots of studies out there about mental health. And not only that, just keeping Iowa's youth and folks in Iowa with something exciting to look forward to with more recreational opportunities. So I think the benefits of this investment are just too much to ignore, and they're supported already by Iowans strongly. So I think that support's going to continue to grow. I just hope our legislators and leadership, will see this as part of a solution to what Iowans really want.
Adam, thank you so much for your time today. Adam Shirley is CEO of Iowa's County Conservation System. And in 30 seconds, Anna, you have the final word. What do you want to say to people?
I would like to say to people and encourage them that their voice matters. I think so much of the time we live in a very noisy society, and it can feel like talking with your legislators about what you care about may not have an impact. But what I really enjoy about working in the conservation space is it really is an issue that brings people together, and something that folks of all different demographics and political perspectives can agree that we should have clean water and healthy environments and abundant wildlife habitat and outdoor recreation. So visit iowaswaterandlandlegacy.org to connect and to learn more about how you can get involved.
Anna Gray, Public Policy Director and Counsel with the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation. They, along with other groups, are hosting a free webinar today at noon. It's called Yes, I Will, How to Advocate for Conservation Funding in Iowa. This is Talk of Iowa from IPR News. According to the nation's foremost expert on book clubs, her name is Carol Fitzgerald, the average lifespan of a book club is 2.5 years. We are going to learn about 2 Iowa book clubs that put most others to shame when it comes to longevity. The Serendipity Book Club in Ames is turning 90 this year, and the Ingleside Study Club in Fort Dodge is turning 125. And we are going to start with the youngster. Veronica Fowler is a member of the Serendipity Book Club in Ames. Hello, Veronica.
Hello, Charity. I am so happy to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here. So this club was founded 90 years ago. Tell me how it started.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a group of university women at Iowa State University, and they were the wife of the president at the time, vice presidents, deans. It was a very elite club, and they had very strict rules. You would have 16. You would be admitted by a secret ballot. It must be unanimous to be considered. You had to be involved with the university, or your husband had to be involved with the university. And of course, it's changed quite a bit over the years, but a lot of the basics stay the same.
So 16. So if you wanted to join this book club, you had to wait for someone to leave or pass away?
Yes.
Is that how that works?
Yes. And it has a history of people being in it for decades. In some cases, we have daughters of former book club members, and it has always skewed older. I like being called the youngster in the group at any point, at any time. But that's sort of a thing, is that usually it's often women in their 40s and 50s are being invited in because someone has passed away. And you are immediately welcomed into this long-standing group of really smart, interesting women who read great books and make delicious desserts.
And how many women are in the group now?
We have just 14 now. We've gotten much more flexible about the numbers, partly because having hosted this book club sometimes, it's a lift to get 16 people in your living room. And if you want them to have plates and make a dessert and have nice coffee and everything else. And so we've kind of settled at 14 for the moment.
And you mentioned plates and nice coffee. It was kind of, and maybe still is, kind of on the posh side. Am I right about that?
A little bit, kind of highfalutin. Certainly, I saw an old picture from the 50s, and there was a beautiful floral centerpiece. There were taper candles. It was your moment to host, and you hosted in a big way. And certainly when I joined the club only 25 years ago, there was a lot more silver and china. And I was younger at the time, and I didn't have silver and china. And then I realized over time it's because I haven't had any grandmothers or mothers or aunts who have passed away. And now at this stage of my life, I find myself surrounded by silver and china. And it is the one time of the year that I dust it off and polish it up and bring it out to a very appreciative audience. But, we also anymore, we just do regular plates, probably paper plates now and again. It's much more casual. And so if someone does that, it's kind of pulling out all the stops.
Now, book clubs work in a lot of different ways. So tell me how this one operates as far as what you read and what you share.
Yes. One thing I love about our club is that you are not obligated to read books that others have chosen for you. Instead, at the beginning of the academic year, usually, we all choose one book and we put it in for and that means we buy one copy, or we have one copy for ourselves. Preferably, we've already read it. But then we also have another copy that we basically take to each meeting, or somebody else takes to each meeting. At the beginning of each meeting, everybody puts their books usually on the coffee table, and then you start rifling through them and deciding what looks good. And somebody's like, oh, I read that. I love that. You would love that. And so you're not obligated to read any of it. And at each meeting, one or two members then gives a report, and usually on the author, not the book, though, of course, we end up talking about the book as well. And so it's a wonderful, low-pressure way just to be introduced to a ton of really good books.
And develop some relationships with some other women who share interests with you.
Absolutely. We all have very similar tastes in books, and it's a very simpatico, friendly, kind group. It's added a lot to my life.
Veronica Fowler is a member of the 90-year-old Serendipity Book Club in Ames. And Veronica, stay with us. But now we are turning our attention to an even older book club. The Ingleside Study Club in Fort Dodge was founded in 1901. It turns 125 in October. And these days, 27 women belong to the group, and it has operated continuously since it was founded. Peggy Murphy has been a member for 10 years, only 10 years. Hello, Peggy.
Yes, right. Hi, Charity.
So obviously you weren't there at the beginning, and this book club is just for women. Tell me how it got started.
Well, I am lucky enough to have a historian in our group, and she has compiled some information in advance of our 125th celebration this coming October. So when it started, the population of Fort Dodge was 12,000, and Jonathan Dolliver was the U.S. Senator. The courthouse was completed. The Carnegie Library was dedicated. So there were just few people that were driving cars. It was just very different times.
Yeah. And someone decided we need a book club?
There were 12 women that started it. It sounds so similar to what Veronica's saying. It was just women who, Ingleside, by the way, means fireside. It's another word for fireside. And its association with books is clear, like the warmth and the light of the fire, providing a cozy spot for reading. 12 women gathered, and then they went from there, just like Veronica said.
And how does your book club work? Because it's not that, we pick 12 books and read one a month. How do you do it?
No, you sign up to be a hostess, or you sign up to be a person who presents a program. And this year we have had a theme, which is looking back. And so we'd start with the decades of the first in Fort Dodge, and then somebody presented a book that was emphasized in the 1920s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. And I broke, because I was the person that just presented my book last week, actually, and I presented The Correspondent. And it just was such a great book. I wanted to share it with everybody. And so it was a spontaneous choice, but it was a choice that I felt so strongly about. And then we contacted everybody to say, this is the book, it's The Correspondent. If you'd like to read it in advance or talk about it. And I have my copy going out to another member soon. And so we're kind of exchanging that book. But I'm interested to hear Veronica talk about how they are, getting the books. Generally we just pick the book that we like.
Okay, so it's pretty spontaneous. But before we go back to Veronica and ask her that, you also all do read one book together each year.
We
Tell me
do
about
the
that.
All Iowa Reads in our last meeting. So this time it is The Quiet Librarian. We will all be reading that and discussing that in April.
All right, and dessert is an important part of what you do as well, just like in the Serendipity Book Club?
Absolutely.
We described the Serendipity Book Club as being pretty fancy, at least in the early days. What's the vibe at the Ingleside Study Club?
It could be anything. Like right after pandemic, we went to a park and went to a cabin area and just had an open air place. We kind of shoot to go to people's homes, but it's a large group. And it is kind of a lot to have that many people come, but it's just lovely to go to people's homes and gather there.
Yeah, I'm interested in the longevity of these two groups and the fact that they have something in common, which is that it's not a requirement to read a book every month or for every meeting. Peggy, do you think that's part of the secret to the longevity of your group?
I think so. I think the listening is just vital. I mean, somebody will present, this is Hamilton, this is the show that everybody's talking about, and here's a book with all the pictures of it. This is Queen Victoria, when they were talking a lot about the royalty. And it's just like you're understanding what's happening, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of biographies and autobiographies, historical novels, anything goes.
Veronica, what are your thoughts about that?
I think that I was noticing that too. And I think absolutely that's key, because I think one reason a lot of people drop out of book clubs is they feel they don't have time.
Right.
I don't have time to read this book. I have my other books I want to read. And you feel guilty, because I've been in traditionally structured book clubs. You feel guilty showing up, and you don't want to quite confess that you haven't read the book, or maybe you just kind of skimmed it a little bit. And so I think that is key.
Yeah, I was talking to my other book club members about it. And then if you have a book and every time you present it, like, this is my book, somebody's going to say, I like it. And somebody's going to say, I don't like it. And that's going to kind of stop or inhibit
Yes.
some of the discussion.
Absolutely. I had the same thing. I've been on both ends. I've recommended a book and everybody
Mhm.
hated it. This is an old, different book club. And I felt so bad. And the other time somebody was just so enthusiastic about a book and you're like, I can't read this. I'm going to have to pretend that I read it. But by the way, Peggy, The Correspondent. I love
Yes,
that. I am reading
isn't
that.
it?
I'm going to
Yeah.
put it in for my selection in the
Oh
fall.
my gosh.
Fantastic
So
book.
it's just well loved. It just really hit it. That is her debut novel, this Virginia Evans who wrote it.
Right, but she's written
amazing.
So, Charity, we'll just be a little book club amongst
Right,
ourselves. now
perfect.
for a minute.
I'm
But
on the
this is
waiting
kind of
list
things
at
we
the
talk about.
library for The Correspondent. So someday I'll be able
I
to
have
join
a
in.
copy. You want me to mail it to you, Charity?
Perfect.
I'm almost done with mine, Charity. You can borrow it. No, she wrote 8. This is why I'm so excited to report on her. She wrote 8 novels. She's in her 40s, and she's never published one. And then finally, partly because of a relationship with Ann Patchett, the fabulous, Tennessee writer, this one got a little bit of attention, just enough to get her published, and it's magnificent. It's just a pleasurable read, top to bottom.
Oh, this is wonderful. I'm excited, even more excited to read that. But also, I feel like I need dessert now, and then I'll really get the full experience of these book clubs. But
Their mail order cheesecake for you.
Veronica, I mean, tell me the role that this book club plays in your life. You've been a part of it for 25 years, so clearly that's a significant commitment.
Yeah. Well, what it is I feel like it's a little bit of time travel in a way. Because life is crazy. Life is busy. I still work full time, but I block out this time. And as often as I can, sometimes it doesn't happen. And I tell the book club if there's an emergency at work, I might not show up. But I will always host. I will always make that happen once a year. You block out some time and you just step into the world of a lovely afternoon gathering of women, books, tea, coffee, dessert, and it's just your blood pressure almost drops. It's just a lovely, even though sometimes we have pretty heated discussions, usually about other things other than books, because the world is a crazy place. But, it's just lovely. It's just some little time-honored, cherished slice that I get to have once or so a month.
Peggy, what about you?
I just echo what Veronica's saying. It's just lovely. It's just lovely getting together with people. And sometimes you sit to listen to a program and you say to yourself, I'm going to have to read that book. I think I'd like to read the series of that book. It just sounds wonderful and it inspires you because nobody wants to read bad books. Everybody wants a great book to read.
Well, and you mentioned, Veronica mentioned that sometimes heated discussions. And Peggy, I know last year, the focus in your book club, there was a theme throughout the year of banned books. And I can imagine that brought up some difficult subjects, and not banned books tend to be books that get a lot of attention because they're provocative. So how does your group manage that?
Well, we are very apolitical, so we don't get into that. But we do talk about this is a book that was banned. I'm not sure why it was banned. We never did come to a conclusion about books because it was a haphazard process of banning books. It went kind of book library by library. But I got a hoot out of a lot of the books that were banned because we all kind of took it in a tongue-in-cheek kind of a way, but we did see that this is what it was all about. Yeah, it was kind of interesting.
So my secrets to success that I've picked up from the two of you so far are desserts and not necessarily requiring people to do the reading. But I also hear that this connection, this community is so important to both of you. With the minute or so that we have left, Veronica, do you have advice for people on how to create community like this or get involved in a book club of their own?
Well, I think, just pull together some like-minded women and find a time that works. I mean, we meet at a time that's actually terrible for me, 1:30 in the afternoon, but it works for most of our members because so many are retired, and make it low pressure make it low pressure, and instead think of the goal. The goal isn't to force people to read other books. The goal is to talk about books, develop friendships, develop community.
Do you want to add anything to that, Peggy?
I do. I just think that when I was talking to my friend Jane about the book club, she said, just tell them you're going to be interviewed. Tell them we are genial women who love to read.
I love that. Now, men can also belong to book clubs. They can be genial. They can love to read. They can also enjoy desserts. So
Absolutely.
we're not going to be sexist about it, but these two book clubs are book clubs for women. Thank you both so much for talking with me. Veronica Fowler, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure and fabulous to meet you, Peggy. I hope you can come to one of our book club meetings someday.
Thank you, Veronica.
Yeah, an exchange program is a good idea. Peggy Murphy, thank you.
I like it.
Thank you, Charity. Wonderful to talk to you.
Veronica Fowler is a member of the Serendipity Book Club in Ames. It is turning 90 this year. The Ingleside Study Club in Fort Dodge is turning 125. And send us an email to tell us about your book club. And yes, it's okay if men are included. Talk of Iowa at iowapublicradio.org is our email address. This is Talk of Iowa from IPR News. I'm Charity Nebbe.